What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Thursday, March 13th, 2025, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 16:14 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from Eastern Europe. So, Russia and Belarus have now officially signed the agreement that would allow Russia to deploy Icbm'S in Belarus. Okay, so Russia is going to deploy their Oreshnik ballistic missiles inside of Belarusian territory. Now, the Oreshnik missile is the Icbm that Russia launched at Ukraine last year. Okay, and this is basically a two-stage solid fueled rocket. Typically an Icbm has three stages, so three boosters. This one has two boosters, which gives it more of an intermediate range. It's basically the RS-26 Rubej missile. So this is actually an intermediate range ballistic missile, but it's based off of an Icbm. So this thing can reach up to 4,000 or 5,000 miles. It can hit anywhere in Europe, all the way to Spain and all the way up to northern Scandinavia. So this is absolutely historic news, guys. This is going to be the first time since the Cold War that Russia has deployed ballistic missiles, long-range ballistic missiles. They already have the Iskander missiles in Kaliningrad and Belarus. They've had Iskander missiles in Kaliningrad since 2009, so that's nothing new. The Iskander missiles are short-range ballistic missiles with a range of up to 300 miles, basically like a Scud missile. But now Russia is going to deploy high-speed intermediate range ballistic missiles based off of Icbm's that are basically impossible to shoot down, with the exception of the Aegis ashore system in northern Poland, in Redzikovo, and in Romania. Okay, so the advantage to Russia moving these missiles into Belarus is that basically they can penetrate European air defenses, and really the only thing that would be able to potentially shoot down one of these Oreshniks is the Aegis ashore. Now, this could change the entire security landscape of Europe, and it could lead to another arms race in Europe, another buildup of forces in Europe, which we haven't seen since the 1980s. In the 1980s, Russia and NATO had positioned all different kinds of ground-launched cruise missiles and intermediate-range ballistic missiles pointed at each other, and we're basically going back to the 1980s. Okay, we know that Trump canceled the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty when he was president in his first term, okay, several years ago. So this is very, very concerning and very historic. Wanted to just mention that to you. Now, in addition to this news, we also have very concerning news that Poland has requested nuclear weapons from the United States. Now, Poland is right next to Belarus. Okay, Belarus and Poland are neighbors. And historically, Western Belarus was actually part of Poland until World War II, when Stalin took the eastern part of Poland and incorporated it into Russia and Belarus. Okay, so there's a lot of tension between Poland and Belarus, especially with the current Belarusian government, which is very friendly to Putin, and they kidnap a lot of Polish journalists, and the Polish minority that still lives in Belarus is persecuted. So now the Polish president is requesting nuclear weapons from the United States. Polish President Andrzej Duda, during an interview yesterday, called on the U.S. to move nuclear weapons to Poland as a deterrent against further Russian aggression in Eastern Europe, stating that he had already begun to discuss the possibility with U.S. President Trump's envoy for Russia and Ukraine, Keith Kellogg. Duda further said about the proposal, the borders of NATO moved east in 1999, so 26 years later, there should also be a shift of the NATO infrastructure to the east. For me, this is obvious. We know that the Polish government last year, in early 2024, officially requested from the U.S. nuclear weapons. Okay, Poland has F-16s. They've had F-16s for over 25 years, and Poland is actually part of the support mission for NATO's nuclear weapons program. Okay, so the way it works is the U.S. has nuclear gravity bombs that they give to European countries, and those European countries are trained in the delivery of those nuclear weapons, and if there were any kind of an escalation, those specific countries would deploy those nuclear weapons against an aggressor. Okay, Poland is part of the support mission for those countries that are certified by the U.S. to deliver those nuclear weapons, meaning that Polish F-16s have already been outfitted and Polish F-16 pilots have already been trained for the delivery of these B-61s in the event that the primary delivery countries cannot deliver those weapons for whatever reason. So Polish pilots are already trained in this, and the F-16s are already equipped for that. Okay, so the only thing that would be needed would be the formality of Poland being accepted into Europe's nuclear sharing program, and ultimately the U.S. has the final say because it's the U.S.'s nukes that are in Europe. Okay, but last year the Polish president and the Polish prime minister officially sent a request or formally applied to join the NATO nuclear sharing program and officially asked Biden to give them B-61s. It looks like Biden obviously denied their request. We'll see if Trump honors Duda's request, especially considering that Russia is moving these Oreshniks into Belarus. Now, we've heard Trump and the Trump administration say that they're going to be moving U.S. troops out of Germany and possibly relocating them to Eastern Europe. So we'll have to wait and see what happens here, but the Polish president has a really good relationship with Trump. Okay, the Polish president was actually the first foreign leader to be invited to Trump Tower after Trump won the election. Okay, so he was the first foreign leader to visit Trump after he got elected. So that is huge. They're very close, and I think it's probably going to happen. But this is a massive sign that we are heading for more escalation. Okay, we have not seen this since the 1980s, and everybody should be prepping. Make sure you have a nuclear war survival plan. Check out my nuclear war survival playlist. I have over 50 videos on what to do if there's a nuclear war. Okay, make sure you have a basement or some kind of underground structure you can get to in a short amount of time, and make sure you have at least 2 weeks of food and water that you can quickly relocate into your fallout shelter. So I'm going to continue to monitor the situation and update you guys accordingly. I want to remind you also that Poland has recently started building the largest defense line in Europe since World War II. It's worth like billions of dollars, and it's involving like 30 to 50 miles of trenches and minefields and anti-tank obstacles and infantry fighting positions and bunkers and ammunition storage warehouses, okay, and air raid alarms, and it's all going up along the border of Belarus. This is huge news, and the mainstream media is not talking about it, okay? So I'm here to warn you that something is brewing here, okay? There's a lot of Russian military buildup in Belarus, okay? S-400 systems, Iskander missiles, tanks, artillery being moved to the border of Poland, okay? And this summer, Russia is going to be doing an exercise with Belarus where Russia is going to move 150,000 troops into Belarus for this so-called exercise. Doesn't that sound familiar? That's exactly what they did before they invaded Ukraine. Also, Poland raised their defense spending to 5% of GDP, the highest in Europe. They're going to be instituting mandatory military training for all adult men in Poland. And they're also going to be converting all civilian airports in Poland to military airports. So every civilian airport in Poland is going to be able to function as a military airport in the case of a war, okay? So this is huge news, and there's been a massive amount of reconnaissance the last few nights in Poland along the border of Belarus. And the presidents of Russia and Belarus, Putin and Lukashenko, released a joint statement today condemning the aggressive and confrontational nature of EU policy towards Russia and Belarus. The statement said Russia and Belarus are ready to take military and diplomatic measures in response to NATO actions, and that Russia and Belarus consider NATO actions in the context of the Ukrainian crisis as hostile and destabilizing, fraught with nuclear conflict. Wow. Okay, so a joint statement released by Putin and Lukashenko saying that the EU's actions are destabilizing and fraught with nuclear conflict. Absolutely huge news. And the Russian Foreign Ministry said today that Russia would respond with all available means to any deployment of foreign troops or bases in Ukraine. Okay, so Russia has made it clear, they've said it numerous times, they will not allow European forces or any foreign troops to be stationed in Ukraine as peacekeepers. Okay, so if Europe goes ahead and deploys their troops into Ukraine, that's going to be the start of war between Europe and Russia, okay? And here we have Putin and his top general, Gerasimov, visiting Kursk yesterday, and I was the first to point out that he was wearing BDUs, battle dress uniform here. Okay, so he is in a wartime mode. He's showing his people, he's showing the world that he is now a wartime leader. Okay, this is very, very serious, guys. I have never seen Putin wear just plain old BDUs. I mean, he doesn't even have any medals or anything at all. He's literally wearing like a pair of $30 BDUs that a regular frontline Russian soldier would wear. Okay, so this is a clear sign that Putin considers himself as a wartime leader. Okay, this is not just a special military operation anymore. He is thinking bigger, okay? He's thinking about a war with NATO, invading the Baltics, okay? Escalation. And there was a encoded message being transmitted on the buzzer, and the encoded message was decrypted, and it says, Pusk Orechnik Kiev 333. And it just repeated that, Pusk Orechnik Kiev 333. And Pusk means start in Russian, so it's saying here start Oreshnik Kiev 333. Now, I don't know what 333 is, but typically that's a satanic number. The Freemasons use 3 to designate their level of power and status. So like a 33rd degree Mason is like the highest level Freemason, and it's a multiple of 666. So that is a satanic number, okay? But it says here, start Oreshnik Kiev and then 333. Okay, satanic number here, Masonic number. So they're talking about using Oreshniks on Kiev, and this was this afternoon, okay? And I want to mention that tonight there's going to be a full blood moon eclipse at 3 a.m. Eastern time. So I'm going to be monitoring that live in my live stream, in the 24/7 live stream. I'm going to see if I can get a camera and point it to the moon, and we're going to be monitoring events worldwide and watching the eclipse worldwide. So tune in at 3 a.m. to my live stream, and we'll be monitoring the full blood moon lunar eclipse, which is very rare. And considering everything going on with these peace talks, and now this encoded message about Oreshniks, and Russia's going to be deploying Oreshniks to Belarus, Poland requesting nuclear weapons. Okay, we know that big things happen around blood moons. Okay, there's numerous prophecies related to blood moons, so something could go down as soon as tonight or in the coming days. Also, we're in the Ides of March. Okay, beware of the Ides of March. And last night, the Russian BareNet, that's the frequency used by the Russian Air Force for their strategic bombers, transmitted some encrypted data for several minutes. So this could mean that Russia is preparing for some kind of an attack on Ukraine with their strategic bombers. So that's what it sounded like. And Putin broke his silence about the peace deal and the ceasefire for the first time today. I want to read to you guys what he said. In his first public remarks on the proposed 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Russia is for it, but that he wants his own security guarantees. Putin raised questions regarding a 30-day ceasefire during a press briefing in Moscow on Thursday as President Donald Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff landed in the city to discuss the proposal. It seems to me it would be very good for the Ukrainian side to reach a truce for at least 30 days, and we are for it. But there is a nuance, Putin said, highlighting concerns regarding Russia's Kursk region, where Ukrainian forces pushed into last year in a surprise offensive, but in recent weeks have seen Russian forces retake significant ground. If we stop the hostilities for 30 days, what does it mean? Does it mean that everyone who is there will leave without a fight, Putin said? Or the Ukrainian leadership will give them an order to lay down their arms and just surrender? How will it be? It is not clear. Putin said he also wants guarantees that during a 30-day ceasefire, Ukraine will not regroup, and he wondered who would determine if there were any violations of a ceasefire. These are all issues that require careful investigation from both sides, he said. Putin suggested Russia should talk with Trump to discuss his concerns, while adding, but the idea itself to end this conflict with peaceful means, we support it. At the top of his remarks, the president thanked Trump for his attention to Ukraine's settlement. We believe that this ceasefire should lead to a long-term peace and eliminate the initial causes of this crisis, Putin said. Okay, so this doesn't necessarily mean that Putin's going to just jump on any offer that Trump gives him. Okay, he's clearly saying that he wants to talk to Trump about it, that this has to lead to a long-term peace that eliminates the initial causes of the crisis. So what were the initial causes? No NATO membership for Ukraine. No NATO east of the Berlin Wall. Okay, so all the former Eastern Bloc countries cannot be either part of NATO or have NATO infrastructure there. Okay, also he wanted a different government in Ukraine. So Putin is not giving up on his initial demands or reasons for invading Ukraine, but he's saying that he's willing to talk about peace. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, okay? And Putin also offered cooperation with the U.S. and Europe on energy. He said if the U.S. and Russia agree on energy cooperation, then the gas pipeline for Europe could be provided. It would be beneficial for Europe thanks to cheap Russian gas. Okay, so Russia is offering an olive branch to Europe, offering them gas. Very interesting. Putin says that he welcomes Western countries now that want to return to Russia. He said it would be beneficial for everyone and that Russia is currently in talks about such a return. Very interesting. And Trump said today that hopefully Russia will do the right thing. He would like to see a ceasefire from Russia. He also said that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is currently being discussed in the Russia-Ukraine talks. And he also said the details of the final agreement have already been discussed. And he also said Putin made a very promising statement and that he would love to meet with and talk to Putin. Okay, so very interesting. And the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, said that Putin is preparing to reject the ceasefire proposal, but he's scared to say this directly to Trump. And a Ukrainian government official said Ukraine understands it cannot recover all of its territory by military force right now and will need to do this diplomatically over time. He also said that Ukraine will not recognize Russia's rights over Ukrainian territory and that territorial concessions were not discussed during the Saudi Arabian talks with U.S. officials. Okay, so U.S. officials did not ask Ukraine to cede territory to Russia. Very interesting. And the Kremlin told NBC News that it didn't want Keith Kellogg at the peace talks in Russia. Very interesting. So Keith Kellogg was kicked out of the peace talks. And the U.S. is working with Ukraine to finalize a ceasefire agreement. And Ukraine offered to sign the minerals agreement with the U.S. at the talks in Saudi Arabia, but the American side said they would take a break to think about it. And Iran confirmed that it received Trump's letter about the nuclear deal and nuclear weapons and that they're currently evaluating it. And this was reported by Sky News Arabia. And Trump said he doesn't think Russia will attack any other European country or allies and said he would make sure that it doesn't happen. And Reuters is reporting that Russia has presented the U.S. with its list of demands for a deal to end the ongoing war in Ukraine and reset diplomatic relations with Washington, with officials stating that the list is broad and similar to previous demands made to Ukraine, the U.S., and NATO. The terms are said to include no membership in NATO for Ukraine, an agreement not to deploy foreign troops or peacekeeping troops in Ukraine after the war, and international recognition of Russia's claim to Crimea, as well as Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia. And Russia said that they do not want a temporary ceasefire and they're only interested in a long-term settlement, according to Putin's aide for foreign policy, Yuri Ushakov. And Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov offered a vague response on March 12th to the U.S.-Ukrainian 30-day ceasefire proposal. Sources in Russian media and close to the Russian president stated that the Kremlin expected the U.S. to discuss such a proposal with Russia in private before publicly announcing it, thereby providing the Kremlin time to formulate a prepared response. Russian opposition outlet Verstka reported on March 12th that a source close to the Russian president stated that the Kremlin would formally give a positive response to the temporary ceasefire proposal, but would also demand impossible conditions to which Ukraine cannot agree. A series of leaks about the Kremlin's response to the temporary ceasefire from a source close to the Russian presidential administration may be part of a Russian negotiation strategy that aims to push the U.S. to renegotiate its deal with Ukraine. And the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed full control of the town of Sudzha in Kursk. Okay, so Sudzha is the critical town in the Kursk region of Russia that the Ukrainians were occupying. And the top general of Ukraine's military, Alexander Syrsky, said that despite the increased pressure of the Russian and North Korean army, we will hold the defense in Kursk region as long as it is appropriate and necessary. The enemy is using assault units of airborne troops and special operations to break through our defenses and oust our troops out of the Kursk region and move fighting to the territory of Sumy and Kharkiv. And White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt declined to say whether or not the U.S. has enforcement mechanisms in the event that Russia violates a potential ceasefire when speaking to reporters on March the 12th. And Putin said yesterday that Russia will treat captured Ukrainian soldiers as terrorists in the Kursk region and that foreign mercenaries are not covered by the Geneva Convention. Wow. And thermal power plant number 16 is burning in Moscow for unknown reasons. So a massive power plant in Moscow is currently on fire. And looks like we had a presidential doomsday plane up in the air this afternoon with no transponder on. This video was sent to me by a spotter on the ground near Offutt Air Base in Omaha, Nebraska, the home of Strategic Command. This is a presidential doomsday plane that was flying around the Offutt Air Base and looping around Omaha, Nebraska. Very, very concerning. Typically, these planes fly with their trackers turned on, so there's no collision with other planes in the area, okay? But this thing was flying with its tracker turned off, so our nuclear forces are definitely on high alert. And also, we had 3 B-52s up in the air this afternoon, 1 over Texas, 2 over Oklahoma and Kansas, and then also a nuclear war command and control plane is currently up in the air. Those planes are responsible for communicating with our submerged nuclear-armed submarines. And the Iranian defense minister paid an official visit to Belarus, and a U.S. official and Ukrainian lawmaker confirmed to the Associated Press that Ukraine currently has no remaining ATACMS missiles. And the EU passed a wide-ranging joint declaration on March 12th condemning the U.S. for blackmailing Ukrainian leadership into capitulating to Russia. The declaration comes a day after Ukraine's presidential office announced it was ready to accept Washington's proposal of a 30-day ceasefire so long as Russia also complies with the terms. The joint statement strongly deplores any attempts at blackmailing Ukraine's leadership into surrendering to the Russian aggressor. The joint statement strongly deplores any attempts at blackmailing Ukraine's leadership into surrender to the Russian aggressor for the sole purpose of announcing a so-called ceasefire. And the French National Assembly adopted a resolution today directing the strengthening of political, economic, and military support to Ukraine by France, the EU, NATO, and other allies across Europe. The resolution also called for the seizure of over $400 billion in frozen Russian assets throughout Europe in order to fund additional support for Ukraine. So guys, Russia warned Europe that they cannot use these seized Russian assets as financing for equipment for Ukraine. They would consider that an act of war, okay? And a Ukrainian drone struck a gas pipeline facility owned by Gazprom in the Saratov region of Russia last night. And also Ukrainian military intelligence drones attacked a camouflaged drone production facility in the Kaluga Oblast in Russia. And the U.S. has renewed Executive Order 12975, extending the national emergency in regards to Iran that was due to expire on March 15th. And look at all the reconnaissance here in Eastern Europe, in Poland and the Baltics. In Finland, you can see 2 private reconnaissance planes in the Baltics, a NATO reconnaissance plane circling Kaliningrad, a NATO reconnaissance plane in Romania, a Swedish reconnaissance plane in Finland. So massive amount of reconnaissance in Eastern Europe. We also had a lot of Russian VIPs on the move earlier this morning. Multiple Russian VIP planes going to different parts of Russia, and they've been moving a lot the last few days. And last night we had a high-priority reconnaissance plane flying over the Midwest and the Appalachians. Not sure why, but really late at night at like 2 a.m. This thing was flying over Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Not sure why they would and this is a combat Sentinel plane. The Air Force only has 2 of them, and they send intelligence directly to the president. But I'm going to continue to monitor everything, and I will be on tonight to monitor the full blood moon eclipse, or the bloodworm moon, which is going to peak at 2:55 a.m. So tune into my live stream at 3 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be covering it. And download my free app from the Google Play Store. The link is in the description below this video. Also follow me on Telegram, Twitter, and Rumble. All the links are in the description down below. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.